Hi. There's somebody inside here who wants to make a video tonight, but I don't know why. But I just thought I would go ahead and do it. There are several individuals in here, and one of them seems to want to say something, but I don't know what it is. So I'm going to create the space for that person to say something if they want to. Oh, okay. What I would like to know is, I want to know about the relationship between a couple of different agencies and their history. I'm thinking of Health and Human Services, HHS. Health and Human Services, which includes the National Institutes of Health and the National Institute of Mental Health. the relationship between those agencies and mind control and traumatology. We know that they brought the Nazis over after World War II in Project Paperclip because they wanted to continue studying the mind control, and that became MK Ultra. It was called Bluebird, MK Ultra, a couple of other names it had, right? So that work was a continuation of what the Nazis had been doing human experimentation in the concentration camps and so forth, and I guess in society overall, right? So the Americans, of course, brought them over. Right? That tells you how much weight you should put on what the American government says, right? About who our enemies are and what our ideals, what our purposes are and all that, right? That'll show you a good example of how much you can trust what the Americans say, right? We hate them because they're so evil, but as soon as we can, we're going to bring them on board and start working with them. That's the American government, right? Valorization of soldiers is the stupidest thing a sovereign people can do. It's the stupidest thing. In the United States of America, the people are sovereign. You know, not the military, not the police, not the government, not the president, not the Congress, not the secret NSA, CIA, or any government agency. They're not sovereign. Neither is the Army, or any branch of the armed services. Neither is any police agency. Any representative of the state authority is not sovereign. The American people are the sole sovereign power in America. All this stuff about thank you for your service. Hey, listen, man. You know, that was like Hitler did that too, you know? That's like Hitler. I'm so tired of hearing about our brave first responders, or heroic first responders, or courageous first responders. You know? They're alcoholics, they're violent, they commit domestic violence, spouse abuse, child abuse. Horrible. The racism, the bigotry of our heroic first responders. You wouldn't believe it. I lived with one. I grew up with one. Their anger, their hatred towards everyone, themselves, their families, you know, the whole world. They're the most disgusting people alive. Our valiant, our heroic first responders, man, they are just the grossest people on earth. I'm so sick of hearing about them. You know? Same thing with soldiers. They're trained killers, let's face it. You know, they're trained killers. What do they specialize in? They specialize in killing people with no remorse, no conscience. What's good about that? There's nothing good about that. There's nothing to valorize in that behavior. Especially when it's not necessary. There's no threat. There's no threat to the United States of America. There's no kind of war. They have to make up wars to keep themselves occupied. They got to make up wars. They got to make up straw men to attack, to have a rationale for this whole apparatus, this gigantic colossus. It's got to have some justification, right? So they got to make up enemies or provoke ones, you know. That's all it is, man. It's bullshit. It's really a shame, you know. But there's a lot of witnesses who know the truth too, you know. So you've got this history of mind control and stuff. Now, the mind control happens in coordination with trauma, intentionally inflicted trauma, right? The biggest growing area in psychology right now is traumatology. I mean, you look it up, it's hard to find them, but there's journals. They're studying trauma. But it's not in order to heal. They claim that. That's always the claim. But they want to study the mind states that accompany trauma, like dissociation. You know, dissociated mind states and trauma. And what that means is they have to inflict traumas on people, psychological traumas, emotional traumas. You can't study the thing unless you have subjects to study. How can you study traumatology without having traumatized people? They don't just go, oh, well, there was an earthquake and a flood and we went and studied them. No, they have to have control groups. They have to have sufficient, sufficient population, sufficient study group to study, for the results to be valid. They can't just wait for a random tragedy and go study the trauma victims. They got to create trauma victims. See, so imagine there's a subject in traumatology called resilience, right? They want to see what makes a person able to withstand traumas in the plural, right? Resilience, right? So it's not difficult to imagine some person saying, you know what, we should study the resiliency of a lifetime, of a person who endures multiple traumas over the course of a lifetime, so that we can understand what makes a person resilient to traumas throughout the course of a lifetime, right? So some other guy says, yeah, okay, that's a good thing to study, right? But problem is, you got to have a person, a human being, who suffers traumas over the course of a whole lifetime to be studied. Otherwise, and that's called a longitudinal study, right? You're going to study this person over the course of an entire lifetime, right? What that means is you've got to take a young person, like a baby or something, traumatize them, and study them, and then re-traumatize them, and re-traumatize them, and re-traumatize them, to study resiliency over the course of a lifetime. There's no other way to study it. Control groups, there's sufficient samples and things like that. You got to create the traumas. And I feel that's really what they're doing. They're really doing that secretly, but it's really being done. Look at all the literature about trauma. The scientific, the psychological, I want to use scientific, that's not the right word. The psychological literature on traumas, traumatology. And you've got MK Ultra. We already know about MK Ultra and all that mind control, right? Now, Health and Human Services runs things like Medicaid, Medicare, and National Institute of Health, National Institute of Mental Health. They've been involved in experiments, right? So, if you're going to a so-called mental health clinic to get help, I'm going to bet you that a lot of those individuals in there aren't there to help you get well. They're not there for that. They're there to study. They don't care about making you well. You don't get well by going to those places, I'll tell you that. You don't get well. What will happen is you'll get hurt a lot. You get hurt very much. You'll end up way worse going to a mental health clinic than you ever were before. Now, why is that? Why is that? Could it be perhaps that there are studies taking place of traumatology? Could be, right? I mean, it's the biggest growing field, as I can see, in psychology, right? Is there some kind of correlation between the ill effects of those community mental health clinics, the ill effects of attending those, and the growing literature in traumatology? Might there be a correlation or something like that? I think so. Another question I have is about Catholic Charities, specifically. I think they're dirty. They are corrupt. They are dirty. Catholic Charities. They are extremely, extremely corrupt and dirty. And I believe that they're working along with HHS, Health and Human Services, and NIMH, National Institute of Mental Health. I think Catholic Charities they have clinics, crappy clinics, where the therapists have no kind of commitment to the clients, no commitment whatsoever. They leave after a year or so. They don't care about you, not at all. Couldn't care less, in fact. And they got an apartment program too. But you go there to die. They send you. You go to that apartment program of theirs to die, basically. I'm lucky I survived. I'm just coming out of PTSD. I've been suffering from PTSD for several years now because I was in their apartment program, Catholic Charities apartment program. I'm coming out of traumatic shock recently, these last couple of months. The level of violence and corruption in that program is awful. And there are things I could tell you, it's not an accident. It's not due to carelessness. It's deliberate. It's intentional. So you have to wonder, might they all be working together? Like the Catholic Charities, it's a good chance, right? Because they say, maybe Catholic Charities said, or HHS, they got to process the Medicaid payments and all that, and Social Security through them, right? So, hey, you want to use our guys for a study? Hey, okay, okay, we'll let you study our populations here, our apartment program and our mental clinics. Help yourself. Come on. It's for they'll rationalize it by saying, well, it's for the overall good, blah blah blah, the overall good of the state of the art of knowledge of all that, right? Meanwhile, they're hurting human beings. They're really hurting human beings. And another thing I question is this brain initiative that Obama started, right? A couple of months ago, I spent about 4 or 5 hours reading that website. You can look at that website. It's www.braininitiative.org. www.braininitiative.org. Spend a few hours looking at the projects that they're doing, and check the links to HHS, NIH, DARPA, every major university, it's just so massive. They're all eager to study the brain, but the thing is, they're eager to study implants, things that are implanted in the brain, right? That means that they have to have live subjects to implant. Chips, brainwave manipulation of brains. This is all right there. It's all right there on that website. Brainwave manipulation of people's brains from a distance. This isn't conspiracy theories. The proposals are right there on the website. You can find them on their website, along with the names of this researchers, this brain scientists, and the university affiliations. They're all listed. They're all listed there. These are not conspiracy theories. They're real. It's not make-believe. So are we ignorant and naive and innocent and stupid enough to think that that's not a continuation of MK Ultra? Of the research they've been building up since Project Paperclip and the Nazis and MK Ultra and all the trauma and all that? That this isn't some kind of a fruition, a third stage of that? Of course it is. Of course. It's the same. It's the usual suspects. It's the usual suspects. Okay, I'm going to leave it at that for now. I'll give you a secret. I'll tell you a secret. The good guys win in the end. Spoiler alert. The good guys win in the end. Bye.